Hi, icons. I'm Kiki Tarot, and if this is your first time, hello. I make astrology content about whatever I want, and today's video, yes, you guessed it, it's about Katseye. Katseye is a global girl group that was formed in 2003 on reality show Dream Academy, which is a collaboration between Hybe Corporation and Geffen Records. I am a huge fan of Katseye. I love them. I'm obsessed with them. I saw the documentary that Hybe made, like, as soon as it came out, because I was like, global girl group, and the marketing worked on me, okay? The marketing worked. I immediately became obsessed with them because I'm clearly their target audience. I'm obsessed with their concept. I'm obsessed with all their members. I love the final lineup. I was really interested in, like, I thought the drama post lineup reveal was really interesting too. Not even hating, just like I was like, oh, interesting. Astrology can give you like a new framework or like a context to understand things. And I thought it would be so interesting to look at like the birth chart of Katseye, the band, like not the individual members, but like based off of its inception, like the day the band was created. And that was like, how the fuck do you do that? You can do that. You can make birth charts for things that are not people. Like that's how they do like election predictions. They just like find the birth charts of like countries or whatever. So I was like, how could I find the birth chart of a band? And I figured it out, guys. I don't know how I did, but I did, and it is so interesting. And I was like, I need to talk to you guys about this because it's so cool. I don't want to yap too much about it, but before I move on, I'm an astrologer and I do birth chart readings. I do solar return readings. The new year is coming up. So if you're interested in, knowing what's in store for you in the next couple of months before your birthday, you want a little bit of a forecast, I work with people and I do those. And yeah, all the links are in my description. And let's begin. First things first, of course, they're Gemini Rising. Hello. I immediately, when I saw like the Gemini Rising, I was like, of course, because Gemini Risings are like youthful, they're young. This is what I'll say about Gemini Risings. My younger sister, Gemini Rising, and she is the youngest of like a bunch of us. There's like, I have 4 siblings, so she's the baby. And like, it gives you this kind of forever youthful energy. Like even when you're older, you still appear like youthful because you're Gemini rising, and Gemini are just like, they're youthful. Like all Gemini risings are very youthful. And so is the image of this band. Like I don't think we consider and think about really that like all of these girls were entering training when they were like 15, 16, 17, 18, like young girls, young girls. And I think that's why they're so popular, right? Like Gen Z, they're very like, they're really on TikTok, they're really on a lot of social media. They know how to like navigate those platforms to a Western audience. So I was like, of course, I think that youth is still a part of their image as well. I want to start by talking about the Lilith conjunct the IC, okay? I am a YouTuber ultimately, so I have to start with the clickbaity thing, the thing that's, the most drama, okay? Because that Lilith conjunct the IC is drama. The IC is in Virgo in conjunction to its Lilith. Why is that interesting? Well, firstly, Lilith is in its fall in Virgo. Lilith is supposed to represent like wild, untamed energy in like mythology. And if you're familiar with like, I don't know if this is in the Bible. I didn't read it. But my understanding is Lilith is supposed to be Adam's first wife, and she refused to submit to his will, so she was banished to Earth. And she represents untamed feminine energy. It represents the repressed feminine in society. And when Lilith is in Virgo, that like wild, untamed energy is changed and bastardized almost, because Virgo is like a very feminine side. It's about service. Like literally Mary in the Bible, she represents Virgo energy. Like she's in service. So when it's in its fall, it creates challenges in areas that have to do with work, with health, with service. But it makes it so there's this feeling of not being worthy. and it's linked to things like dietary habits or like excessive focus on health. So a lot of the time it manifests in a very hypercritical nature, where you're might have had really demanding parental influences or just influences in general, or a hyper focus on things like achievement, appearance, or perfectionism. Having this conjuncture I see in a chart that's representing a band, that's like the roots, the foundation, the emotional foundation, the literal history behind some, like a, the inception of the band itself. And I think that's something that we know already about the band's inception. If you saw the documentary, they were not super nice to the girls. There was an expectation to be thick-skinned, be able to handle criticism. Again, we're dealing with young people, young girls. So it was kind of jarring to even watch like adults interact with them that way. Like I was like, whoa, like this seems, but at the end of the day, they're employees. They are working a job, so it's, they have to kind of be adults. It also creates competitive energy and cattiness. I think like the documentary was obviously edited, but I imagine there was a lot of pressure to look a certain way. I think there were clear favorites in terms of the production company who they wanted to invest in. That maybe wasn't necessarily just based off of musical talent, which, I don't think that's either here nor there. It's ultimately those things are coachable, but there was a huge emphasis on looking a certain way, presenting a certain way, and an image that's pure and like perfect and very hypercritical. And it's the foundation of the inception of this band. Okay, so Sun in the sixth house. The sixth house is, again, traditionally it's associated with things like service and responsibilities. And when you have the sun here, specifically for this group, it means that the group, the relationship of the group, the people in the group, its essence revolves around taking on responsibilities, meaningful tasks, and handling burdens together. Their identity is tied to this shared vision, this shared idea, and it's in direct conjunction to their Mars. And when you have your Mars in the sixth house too, it means that work is really stressful. There's a lot of responsibilities, there's a lot of duties, and there's a risk of burnout because if those stressors are unchecked, the relationship can really suffer. And it's in opposition to their Uranus in the 12th house in Taurus. So when Uranus is in Taurus, it's talking about very like human needs, human desires. Like Taurus is an earth sign, but Taurus is very like based in the material. It's ruled by the second house, right? So it's literally our sense of a connection to the physical world. I'm knocking some wood next to me. And when you have Uranus in Taurus, because Uranus is about rebellion, it's talking about breaking away from norms of industrial life, kind of. It's like wanting to live outside of the city and wanting to live closer to the earth. Wanting to connect to nature is very Uranus and Taurus energy. It's about being in touch with your physical body, learning from animals, like learning how animals just exist, and they don't think about what they're supposed to be doing. They're in tune with their bodies and their needs, and they just act without thinking. So when you have this opposition, it's revealing a lot to me. It's revealing that there's this core identity that is based in being in service to each other, working for each other, working for this shared mission that they're dedicated to, that is stressful, that is burdensome. But there's some tension there, especially because Uranus is in the 12th house, and the 12th house is like the hidden realms. It's things that are below the surface. But there's also this pull towards needing to listen to your body, needing to connect to nature, be on a schedule that makes sense for yourself, being aware of your sensory experiences, and like honoring that is really Uranus in the 12th house energy, especially when it's in an opposition. And it's interesting to me is because like Hybe is, we know you're familiar with the K-pop training model, and I think that there's kind of this understanding, acceptance that is like, if you want to be famous, if you want to be, you want all, you want to be this launched into stardom essentially, um, you have to be okay with taking on these burdens, because if you want this, then you have to do this. This is just part of the exchange. But I don't think we are in a place like as a society to examine how problematic that is, especially when we're dealing with children, young people, young girls. Anyways, what I'm seeing is there is like a lot of kind of this hidden rebellion around needing to be more in tune with your body and its needs and its values. And that's something that's maybe below the surface. In terms of their public image, the Saturn conjunct the MC, the midheaven, for me is very interesting.
I'm coming in from the future just to make an addition, but I'm talking about Saturn in Pisces conjunct the midheaven because that's relevant to the interpretation.
I do feel with a Saturn midheaven, like there was kind of like a lack of boundaries when it comes to relationships with like celebrities, specifically like idols, I feel like. And they're not K-pop, it's not K-pop, but like it is kind of K-pop adjacent in the sense that like there's this parasocial relationship with fans, and this idea that like the fan engagement is part of how they're able to become as popular as they are. And that's what a Saturn midheaven is to me.
Saturn in Pisces midheaven.
It's like, especially with, you have that Neptune also in the 10th house, boundaries are dissolved. There's this encouragement to almost like become one, this very parasocial relationship, which I'm not being critical of, more so just an observation. But when there's Saturn there, especially when it's in the 9th house, especially at 0 degrees, there's this kind of a public image that is very intentional, restricted, right? Especially because the Saturn is making that square to the Sun, the Mars, and it's opposing the Lilith. Like, there are restrictions in terms of the ways they're supposed to present. There's almost this idea that you're kind of meant to fit in within the context of previous people, previous examples, right? Which can be challenging. It can be challenging, especially with these placements, because Aries North Node in the 11th house, they're the first of their kind. Aries is a pioneer. It is kind of known as innovative in what it's doing, and it very much is. Their public image is. They have a conjunction with Chiron in their 11th house, however, their North Node. And what's interesting is when you have a Chiron in the 11th house, there are wounds around belonging, around oversensitivity to your own ideals and beliefs. And I think that it's interesting to me. This is kind of revealing about like what the direction of the band is going in, because they have their Neptune in the 10th house, which to me is saying, well, there's this idea of like a collective image, right? It's not individual. They are a collective, very much in their image. Their image was initially very controlled, and they're moving towards accepting in their individuality a little bit, in terms of not being this very clean, perfect image. And it is innovative in a way, because there are particular ideals of what it looks like to be in a global girl group, specifically in previous models, and they're breaking that mold a little bit in terms of they are so. I think that's why they resonate with people. They're very real. Like, they're very much a reflection of Gen Z, in the sense that like Gen Z is so, and this might be the Uranus, Neptune, and Aquarius generation thing, but so individual in their expression, in their identity, and not holding back in terms of stepping in that individuality, which it does go against like the standard like model, and they're breaking that model. And it's healing in a lot of ways. And like part of that is meant to be. So that's really interesting to me. first with Manon, because she has her North Node, Mercury, and Saturn in the first house of the band's chart. Interesting, really interesting. There's a lot here. It doesn't surprise me that Manon faces a lot of critique to her identity, to who she is as a person, while she's been in this band. Because with the North Node in the first house, there is something that has to do with the identity of this band that is important to her development, important to her reaching her like soul's mission, is the idea of the first house North Node. And when it's making a conjunction to Mercury and Saturn, firstly, Mercury is like restrictions around communication, restrictions around one's sense of self that are being kind of being put under a microscope while she's in the band, right? It's like in the first house, it's the most visible thing about the band and its identity is right on where her Saturn is, where her North Node is, where her Mercury is. I thought that was so interesting. Megan, her Mars is in the 12th house of the band's chart. I know near the beginning of the tour, Megan was not on a couple of, I think she missed a couple of performances due to an injury. But this is interesting to me because, again, when we have planets in that 12th house in Taurus, we're talking about physicality and we're talking about our drives, and there might be some hidden drives that have to do with how she physically shows up that have to put to the side. Like, I don't know if there is some sort of something chronic that she deals with that is maybe not publicly disclosed, and I don't want to speculate, but it's interesting to me that her Mars falls in the 12th house, because to me that means that physically there are things that she's experiencing that are not on the surface, that we do not have access to. But at the same time, she has her Jupiter, so she just shows up at work. She just that is where she excels. That's where she, she has the ability to do so much and she adds so much. But there are some physical things that are not at the forefront. Yeah, I might make a more in-depth video, to be honest. I just wanted to give a few of my thoughts. I can absolutely make a more in-depth video talking more about the individual members' interactions with planets within, the Katseye birth chart, and I can add more context to that conversation. Didn't really, want to get into it too much this video, but again, thank you so much for watching. I love making this content. It helps so much when you guys like and subscribe, though, because then I can make it more often. And again, I'm an astrologer, which means I do birth chart readings, I do solar return readings. Again, New Year's is coming up. I do tarot readings, and I do a bunch of other stuff. Check out my website, check out my Instagram, and have a wonderful holiday season.